Sorry for the confusion. I had to move my live. I originally had it for 5, and then I scheduled it for right now. Quickly scheduled. I had to reschedule it because of my crazy schedule. Supposed to be going to not Liberia, what am I saying? Santa Cruz in a little bit. Why? Because we're trying to talk to the cable company that has installed their cable all over our hand-milled Guanacaste wood trim. So there's that. I get to go be angry white woman today. Angry middle-aged, well, I'm older than middle-aged, angry old white lady. So I get to Karen out today. If you don't know me, I'm Suzanne Tidkemeyer. I wrote for Pathos for nearly 10 years, column called No Longer Quivering. I wrote for No Longer Quivering for about a year before that. So now I'm not doing that. Now I'm doing the YouTube thing like everybody else. And it's a little easier, it's a little harder. Hey, Kentucky girl, when things get stuck in my brain pan, I'm going to come on here and I'm going to gripe. Kind of like Karen 2.0, I guess. I guess I am. Except that hopefully the stuff I'm griping about is actual stuff that matters instead of Guanacaste trim. Okay. This morning, I was doing my thing where I get up in the morning and I'm drinking my coffee. Right now, Coke. Diet Coke. Coca Zero. And I'm looking around at everything that everybody's posting. And all my friends were posting this pretty horrific crap out of one of the ministries and that I used to cover for NLQ, and also one that was not out of ministry. And I was just like, hold up, when I read both of them. One of them came out of a lady that has the brain tumor, whose writings have always seemed kind of strange, but they've gotten worse as the brain tumor has come back. Now, she claims to be healed now, but she's back in remission. I don't know. Her writing sure doesn't seem like it. So first, I want to talk about the first thing I had listed up above about fundamentalism and serving your man. Okay, if you're like me and you're the only cook in the house, my husband can burn water, I think, but he doesn't cook. He just doesn't do it. His mother waited on him hand and foot when he was growing up, so there's that. So he just does not cook. It's not his specialty. When I first met him, he told me he could cook, hamburger helper. And that's kind of where it remains today. So a lot of times when I'm cooking, I will go ahead and serve him because it's just easier for me to make the 2 plates up and bring him the plate. Well, this thing that I saw earlier today that I'm talking about was talking specifically about serving your husband. And I don't mean in the you cooked and it's just easier to slap it on the plate and hand him the plate than it is to have him tromping into the kitchen, getting in your way while you're cooking. So there's that. It's a different one. This lady, let me see if I can pull up what it was she said exactly, because it was pretty horrific. I want to read it to you word for word because it really got my chimes going in a negative way. And this is something I've run across a number of times. Okay. This woman is called Total Bodied by April. One of the biggest issues in marriage relationships today is we underestimate the importance of the little things we can do for the relationship. Take this tweet, for example, from this king who was irritated by his wife who didn't do something or as little as fix his plate. As for me, I always fix my husband's plate. But if I weren't the plate fixing type in this situation, I would have at least read the room and followed suit with the other ladies and fixed my man's plate. I wouldn't want my husband to feel embarrassed or less than. Again, family, it's the little things that go a long way. And she's not done by any stretch of the imagination with what she was saying. Let's see if we can grab the other part of it. Okay. I'm not going to necessarily say she was wrong per se, but this was a great opportunity to make her husband feel like the man, feel special. And yes, ladies, we do our part in making our husbands feel like men special. The same way, and when I do this as caps only, we want our men to make us feel like women special. Because such as when our men hold the doors for us, plan and take us out on dates, pull our chair out for us, and we can sit, foot massages, etc., etc. Remember, it's the little things that make marriages, relationships special, and it goes both ways. Your thoughts, please, family. Your thoughts, please, family. Good morning, kings and queens. Have a great Sunday and be blessed. She was talking about a tweet she saw. Now, and I don't know if it was a tweet, so it was something else, because it was, dude, why did you do that? Okay. Let me see downloads. Why is this not in my download? The thing she was talking about was a tweet. It said, I was at a couple's dinner with another couple cooked and hosted. All the men sat at the table. The other two women fixed their husband's plate, and my wife fixed her own plate and sat down. The other two men had their plates and were eating, and I was just sitting there. Really? Dude, grow up. This is actually something that's pretty common in Fundy Town. I've seen this again and again and again and again. I've seen it in Quiverful. I've seen it in regular evangelicals. I've seen it in fundamentalist evangelicals, that the woman serves the man. Like I said, it's one thing if you're cooking the food and you're serving him to get him out of your hair, or you don't want him in your kitchen messing up stuff, or you just want to bless him. That's all fine. Do it. But here's the thing. If you take those Titus 2 verses literally and you serve your man first all the time, that is just going too far. You know, it just kind of blows my mind, because you look at the Acts of Jesus, where Jesus actually waited on other people first. You can see that it's not really a commandment for you to serve somebody else just based on their gender. I saw my husband was 27-year-old. If he could operate jet, he could figure out how to get to the plate. Most wives loaded their husband's plates. Yes. And like I said, when I do it here, it's only because I don't want him in the middle of my kitchen messing stuff up. It's just easier for me to slop my food, his food, particularly if I'm trying to get him to eat vegetables. Because a lot of times if I have him in there to serve himself, he won't eat the vegetables. But if I serve him and I put a nice salad and vegetables there, he'll eat vegetables into somebody who doesn't necessarily like vegetables. So I saw this. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Ark and the Genesis Museum in northern Kentucky, almost to Cincinnati. Ken Ham and his whole foolishness. So he, where this place is, where the Ark Museum and the Answers in Genesis Museum is not really near a major city beyond Cincinnati. It's just not. So getting a hotel room can be problematic unless you cross the bridge into Indiana and get a bed in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Cheryl, it is a fundamentalist kind of thing, and it's full of junk science. It's actually pretty comical. I keep saying I'm going to go and laugh and giggle and point, but it's $35 a head, and I don't feel like giving Ken Ham or anybody $35 to be able to laugh and point. So I've never been. I've seen Covington, Covington, Kentucky. So there's that. And so every time we go see my husband's family in Rising Sun, Indiana, because that's where his entire family settled before his father spun out and went down to Louisiana, and his brother went to Cincinnati, and then they had some cousin that went out west. They had all kinds of stuff. So anyway, long story short, the only hotels there are anywhere near where his family lives are in Lawrenceburg, Indiana, any decent hotels. So anyway, long story short, the only hotels there are anywhere near where his family lives are in Lawrenceburg, Indiana, any decent hotels. You cross the bridge over the Ohio, and I don't go anymore. I have a hard time when I go see them because there's coal-fired power plants at either side of that bridge. And I had a scary, intense asthma attack one time going over that bridge while I was driving. It was turning blue by the time I actually got to the hotel, which was a block off of the bridge. So it was push the meds and lay back. So this particular trip, the push the meds and lay back and almost damn die. They were trying to call the rescue squad for me when I rolled into the hotel with the EpiPen hanging on my leg. So there's that. So this hotel, I didn't go anywhere. I didn't, Aaron, I do stuff like that all the time. So this trip, my husband went out and he left me in the hotel a lot because I was really suffering from the coal-fired power plants, which Obama shut most of them down. Now they're back running, which means I will never be going there again until they're shut down again because I just can't handle it. Every time I go now, I wear an N95 mask when I have to pass those things so that I can keep breathing with only minor asthma. So long story short, because I didn't go anywhere and I stayed in the hotel a lot and only went once or twice to see the family in Rising Sun, I had plenty of time to do my favorite thing in this whole world, people watch. I may be pretty introverted, but I people watch. One morning at that hotel, I'm sitting there having coffee, reading a book in the breakfast area because this was can't remember if it was a Comfort Inn or a Quality Inn Suites. I think it was a Comfort Inn Suites, this hotel, or at least it was then. And they are magical. You got to breathe, and 95s are. So I'm sitting there, minding my own business, reading a book, having a cup of coffee, watching various people tromp in and out of the hotel dining room wearing Creationism Museum t-shirts. T-shirts from the place that I'm talking about, the Creationism Museum. So I'm watching this. This one family comes in. It's a husband, 3 little boys, a daughter, and the wife. And the wife is wearing the denim skirt that falls exactly halfway between your knee and your ankle, about where capris usually fall most of the time. So that man is insane. You are absolutely right. So there's that. And I watched them because it was an entire family instead of a youth group or whatever. The wife ran and made the husband a plate, made him a cup of coffee and brought it to him. She made plates for all 3 of the boys. The little girl had to get up and make her own plate, and the mother made her own plate. The mother just sat down to eat when the husband needed more coffee and refills. And I watched her go back and forth waiting on the males in her family. And I actually asked her on the way out, I said, why are you doing this? Because she didn't even get a chance to eat. She had to just gobble down a few little things while she was waiting on her men folk. She said, well, it says the men are the head of the family. We're supposed to serve them and please them. She started trotting out that whole thing with Paul where basically orders you to make yourself into a doormat in their interpretation, which is not at all the interpretation that a lot of people go with. So I'm sitting there and I'm asking her questions because I do this when I talk to very fundamentalist people or very evangelical people. I won't give them much information, but I'll ask them question after question after question to get to the heart of the matter. So that's what it was. She was leaning on Titus, the book of Titus, and she was leaning on the writings of Paul, the Pauline writings about the role of women, the gender role thing that a lot of them push. That if some scholars say that's not at all what the scriptures mean. So she was following that. Cheryl, I don't think so. They cherry pick. That's one thing I've noticed about evangelicals, quiverful, and fundamentalists. They cherry pick the whole thing that makes the thing just really toxic. It's a very toxic way to go about life. I asked my husband earlier, I said, I read him that thing where the man complained that it was the buffet style thing and he wasn't getting waited on and the other guys were. I asked him about that and he said, heck no, you and I have very different tastes and you would probably put things on there that I have no desire to eat. So I'm going to be making my own plate if there's an option to do so. And it's not because of gender roles or anything else. It's just because that's what grown-ass people do. But you'll see this especially in Quiverful, where the umbrella of authority, like the Bill Gothard thing, you got the umbrella of authority, you have Jesus and God, you got the husband, you got the wife, and the only people under the wife are the children. So this lady was taking the male submission to a horrifying new low when she started serving all of her sons. And at least two of her sons were teenagers. So I was pretty shocked by that, even though at that point I hadn't even been out of Quiverful maybe 4 or 5 years. So at that point I hadn't even been out of Quiverful maybe 4 or 5 years, maybe, even that. So there's that. People do that, and that's how they live, and it's not supported by Scripture. It's another case of men are up with it. Get up and get it. Right? Stick with that. And there are times even here I'll say, hey, I'm busy. Fix your plate. I left all the food out. And I do consult him on what I cook to a degree. It's like he said this morning, he said, can we have pancakes? Well, I hadn't made pancakes in a while because I've been trying everything to reduce my cholesterol naturally because I can't take statins. So I have been living on oatmeal and or Cheerios for breakfast because there's some evidence that consuming oat products will. In theology, I'm going to talk about to debunk today, besides serving your husband left and right. I must have sat there and had like 4 cups of coffee while I was watching all this go down because A, the coffee at these places is like water, and B, it was just fascinating to watch this scenario and then ask the woman when I got her loan to say, hey, what was that all about? Yeah. So anyway, long story short, I had enough family members that thought that way. Oh, did I disappear? I hope not. Anyway, the second one I have to talk about was something that Lori Alexander posted on her blog today. If you don't ever go read her blog, it's at thetransformedwife.com. I try not to ever go there, but somebody posted something today that I just had to comment on. And since she has to be blocked on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, on comments on her blog, that I have to resort to what I have to resort to say that. And let me warn you, if you ever go up against Lori has some of the craziest fans of all time, short of Steven Anderson. Steven Anderson has some pretty crazy ones too. So Lori wrote today that you're not supposed to work when your kids are teenagers because they will stray into sexual sin. Fornication. A game everybody can play to bad effect. She was, Cheryl, you'll laugh and you'll want to punch your computer. It's both. I will leave the link down below. Lori Alexander approves of Larry Solomon, approves of Lori Alexander. They've left comments back and forth on each other's blogs and each other's various things. talking about how righteous the other one's interpretations are. Lori's what I call a honey badger. She's somebody that uses the scriptures to beat women down and to say horrible things to women all the time for the approval of fundamentalist men. When fundamentalist men post, also keep in mind that Lori and Ken are forbidden to teach this garbage in any number of churches where they live in the San Diego area. They've been banned. They've been asked not to come back. Various things. It is like talking to a wall. Lather, rinse, repeat. It is. It is. That's why when the only time I ever talk to them, it is ask some questions. I pull the Jesus routine and I ask about 10,000 questions. Prairie? No. I know who Larry is. I know exactly who Larry is, and I will PM you on Facebook because I can give you a name and a location on him. I know who he is. And I got some files I have to send you that are hysterical that expose who he is and why. Because somebody sent that to me, and I put it up on Facebook. Not Facebook. I put it up on YouTube. Dang, my brain's really going crazy today. I put it on No Longer Quivering because we were always arguing about who Larry was, and some people thought he was Trey Magnuson. Some people thought he was some other dude who apparently pranks others. Somebody else thought it was some guy named Alan. There's all these different names that people have said that were Larry. Hello, Larry. So none of them are Larry. None of them are Larry. Larry is his own unique self. And when I saw who Larry really was, I laughed because he's the most average middle-aged man on the planet. You're looking at him going, yeah, big talker, keep talking that nonsense. Keep talking about keeping women down. Keep talking about taking withholding your wife's pain medication to make her behave, and withholding all money and anything to make her behave. If you got to make your woman behave, you got more issues than I could ever deal with. Are you having problems with your hip, Aaron? Me too. It's crazy. The what would Jesus do comebacks for these? I like to quote scripture at them and tell them, so because that's what they understand. They understand scripture when you start quoting it at them. But they will tell you that when you quote scriptures at them, that you're out of context. They're not out of context in their minds, even though the thing that they are promoting is pretty awful. So there's that. I don't understand it. I don't like it, but it is what it is. Janine, it really depends upon who you're trying to say what to whom. It depends upon the topic. That's something I will develop later. I'm going to go ahead and put down a list. Scriptures they say, scriptures you can use to combat that, because there are some. Well, the thing with Lori today, what Lori said was that if you're not a mother and you're not home all the time, your teenagers will be fornicating like rabbits, I guess, because the rabbits are supposedly like that. And I don't know, but here's the thing with that. Teenagers are going to do what teenagers are going to do. If they're going to fornicate, there is no way on this planet that a mother being at home is going to stop them from it. It's going to drive them underground if they're determined to do that. They're going to say things like, Mom, I got to go study with Michelle at her house, or we're going to the library. I'm going to the library with so-and-so. They're going to be devious. You'll teach them to lie to you. When you put them in a situation where they cannot express any feelings whatsoever about sexuality, even healthy feelings, if you don't keep that line of communication open, whether it's you giving them advice and them turning to you or not, it's still better to try to keep that line of communication open, because it is actually the goal of parenting is to try and keep your kids from engaging in that behavior until they are emotionally and physically ready for it. And I would say 18 is probably a good rule, but let's face it, nobody does that anymore. Very few people. I was fortunate. We were in the cult and mine didn't until my kids were all pretty good about it. I made out with my boyfriend in the equipment room of the gym at our religious school. Yes, yes, I made out with Carl. I know Carl's last name, but I'm not going to say it. I made out with Carl on the high jump bag one day at school, at religious school too. Catholic school, I made out with Carl. Behind that, I made out with Carl behind the school. I made out with Carl a lot when I was a teenager. Janine, that's the way to do it. That's the way to do it, exactly. Yeah, we would have been expelled too, Prairie. That's what was so funny about it, is we were just, it's just fun brain chemicals. Yes, exactly. Kissing does equal fun brain chemicals when you're a teenager, especially. It's like, oh my goodness, I got these feelies. So Lori is saying that if you stay home, your kids won't do this. BS. Your kids will do that. They will just find some other way. You'll have them going behind the high jump bag at the religious school or under the bleachers or whatever, the equipment room, like you said. You'll have them telling you they're going to the library and then they're heading over to wherever and they're having their fun. Better to keep the lines of communication open so that when your teenager tells you, hey, I'm having these feelings, say, well, what do you want to do about that? And let's talk about this and see if you can support them in some way. I always answer questions honestly, provided BC when they got to that point. You have to, because if you don't, you're liable to end up with a child having a baby, or worse, like an incurable STD. You really have to be proactive with your children in those years. You just have to be. Your husband was an OBG? Oh, that's cool. Janine, that's one way to handle it. That's a good way to handle it. I just remember being a teen and all the hijinks I got up to behind my mother's back. And my mother was not a stay-at-home mother. My mother worked. So there was that. I wasn't given much supervision at all. But I'm going to say this. I don't think it would have worked. It wouldn't have worked at all, because when I lived with my father for periods of time in my teenage years, and my stepmother was home all the time and my father was around, didn't even slow me down at all with the things I was going to do. But then again, I wasn't raised in a fundamentalist or evangelical or quiverful C word. I was raised Catholic, going to the Episcopal Church too with my father. And I was pretty much a non-believer at that point, and it didn't slow me down at all to have adults around, because I was devious enough and determined enough and driven by hormones enough to figure out ways around those people who thought because I was quiet and reading my books that I was not that way. Started birth control when I was 15 because of medical issues. I remember my dad having to pick it up from the pharmacy. Oh, that must have been interesting. Prairie, that's very true. Some mothers, particularly the more fundamentalist ones, will make birth control seem either ineffective or just this side of, how should I put this? Just this side of like worshiping Satan and giving yourself abortions. There are those mothers that don't understand how it works, and that's how it is. Yes, because Janine, that was believable. Not everybody had a home phone, much less a cell phone. And now everybody has a cell phone. They could track whoever. But what is going to stop your teen who you think is at the library from picking up their cell and saying, "Hi, Mom, yeah, we're almost done," when they're out smoking cigarettes and drinking beer doing God knows what behind the school gymnasium. There's nothing to stop anybody from doing that. So there's that when I was a teen. So I think her advice is not valid. But the reason she says that advice is, first of all, Lori never wanted to work. She said more and more that she didn't want to work. And she's tried to wrap that in Paul's advice as gender roles and Titus 2. She's tried to wrap it in Titus 2 and justify her staying home. And I think from reading her story that it wasn't so much Titus 2 and it wasn't so much, what was the name of it? Not so much Paul that drove her desire to stay home. She just didn't want to work. We look at her history, and I think that she just didn't want to work. She found a convenient Bible verse to wrap herself in to say, hey, I'm not working. And her husband, God bless Ken, because I'm sure he's put up with a lot through the years, bought into it eventually and justified her and all this crazy stuff she's saying. And people say, oh, you hate Lori. No, I don't hate Lori Alexander. I actually feel kind of sorry for her because she's living a life that seems like it's just very shut in, very controlled, very constricted, like she's living in a cage of fear without people around her beyond her husband. And that's no way to live. That's no way for anybody. I don't wish that kind of behavior, that sort of thing on anybody. Maybe one or two people, but not her. I just look at her and she's pathetic. Teens will be teens. That's how we grow. You're right. And that's how we grow. We push those boundaries, and that's how we grow, and that's how we learn. That's how we learn to do things. That's how we learn who the predators are. I hate to say it, is having some experience with dealing with people. When we let our kids experiment just outside the safe range of us being with them, we're actually doing them a very valuable service. And that's one of my, she had a nanny, she had somebody helping her homeschool, she had a maid, she had all that stuff. So I don't think any of her advice, it doesn't come from anything she did. It came from stuff that she thought. Now, she claims that she was ill for many years with back problems and stomach problems and all kinds of things. So I don't know that. Was Lori ever religious before she transformed? Yes, she was. She was raised in like a standard evangelical Christian home. But she complained in her book, The Power of the Transformed Life, that her mother told her it was wrong her mother never told her it was wrong to have sex with his boyfriends. She never did. She talked about being taken, some guy trying to take her to the drive-in, submarine races, whatever, and how she felt like her mother should have protected her and stuff. If they weren't having that kind of open relationship when they were talking, then there's no level of protection at all. Even if you're saying, hey, stay home, don't do that. You've got to know those things. She's talked a lot of horrible things about her mother in her childhood. Apparently, she was not close to her. She was close to the father. That's how we develop our spider senses. You're right. Those subconscious warnings that we all have and can't explain, but know. Yeah, I have those. And guess what? When I ignore those, that is when I get into trouble every single time. So I try to always do that. I was thinking the other day, there was somebody, can't remember who it was. And my husband was not happy with me. I gave him the bum's rush and just was like, nope. And I did it because my spider senses were tingling. My spider senses were telling me, run away, or like the Lost in Space robot, danger, danger, Will Robinson. So when that happens, when I get those feelings, if I can do that, if I can handle it, I just get away from them. Hey, Angela, so there's that. And I think, there's a book by Gavin DeBecker called The Gift of Fear. I highly encourage everybody to read that book because that's what he talks about. He talks about those feelings you get, the warning signs. I actually was talking about that in my book about Caroline Cole that I finished, but I won't publish. I talked about how you can get those feelings And I talked about an incident that happened to me near Shreveport when I was playing in a band, where I got run off the road by an 18-wheeler, and my spider senses were going nuts. The 18-wheeler stopped, and he started walking back to me, and a good Samaritan who'd seen what went down pulled in behind me to say, "Hey, are you okay?" And the minute he did that, the guy in the 18-wheeler ran back to the truck and got in. I think I dodged a bullet there, and I don't even know for sure what that is. But here's what I do know. In this Shreveport area during that time frame, there were a lot of women that disappeared either from shopping center parking lots or off the interstate, and they either found a body years later or they didn't find. And I think that that's what it is. And like I said, if you have those things, yes, those red alerts give you about 5 to 10 seconds to get out, and you should use it. Yeah, it's just crazy. It's crazy how these things work. It's called The Gift of Fear. I believe it's by Gavin de Becker, I think. But the title of the book is The Gift of Fear. That was one we used to promote on No Longer Quivering too, because that's a really essential book in so many ways. Just Jan, that's the smart way to do it. I actually did that too with both my daughters, even though we were. I'm going to go ahead and go because I'm losing my voice and my mind, and I got to run. I have to run to Telecable and yell at them because of the damage that their technician did to the hand-milled woodwork of my home. So before I go, I've touched a couple times on the Afghanistan thing. Afghanistan and how upset I've been watching all of this and everything else. John Oliver of Last night did a segment where he did the best explanation of Afghanistan, how we came to be and what has happened and what's happening now. And it is up on YouTube. I'm going to put a link in the description along with a link to the Gavin de Becker book. And I really don't want to, but I might put a link to the Lori Alexander thing, because if you haven't seen her posts, they're mind-boggling. And Prairie, I got a file to send you. Forewarned is forearmed.